Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the AIOZ network and how they're tweaking their digital economy. We've got this Tokenomics 2.0 document. It's basically their roadmap for the AIOZ token going forward.
Yeah, it lays out the before and after, what the tokenomics were, what they are now, how they're handling inflation, burning tokens,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
exactly. And our goal here really is to help you quickly get a handle on what these changes actually mean.
Right. We want to unpack the big shifts, especially around inflation and token burning, and figure out the impact for the network, for stakeholders, for everyone involved.
So you walk away understanding why they're doing this, not just what they're doing, how it's all meant to make things, well, more stable and rewarding, hopefully.
Okay, let's get into it then. Where do we start? The old system.
Yeah, let's start there. So the document mentions that after their mainnet went live, which was back in December 2021,
Right.
they initially set an inflation rate of 9%, though due to block times, it effectively kicked in around March 2023.
And, 9%. It's not unheard of in crypto, but they actually acknowledge in the document itself that, well, high inflation can lead to instability over time.
Which is interesting. It shows they're thinking ahead, being proactive.
Yeah, not just letting it ride. Which brings us nicely to V2, the new tokenomics.
Right. So why change? It seems like it's all about adapting, you know? The network grows, its needs change, the participants' needs change.
Exactly. They talk about fostering a sustainable and balanced token economy. That's the key phrase.
And an AIOZ token itself is pretty crucial, isn't it? It does a few key jobs.
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamental. You've got staking for security, obviously, then rewarding the DePIN managers.
Those are the folks running the actual hardware, the nodes.
Precisely. The decentralized infrastructure providers. And, of course, it facilitates transactions across the network.
So messing with the tokenomics isn't trivial. It ripples through everything.
For sure. And this controlled reduction in inflation they're planning, it's designed to sort of optimize how the token works in all those roles and maintain its value.
Okay, so the specifics. This is where it gets quite concrete. They're committing to less inflation.
A clear schedule.
Starting December 25th, 2023, so this already started, they began cutting inflation by 1% per year.
For 4 years.
Right. So 8% kicked in late 2023, then it'll be 7% at the end of this year, 2024,
Then 6% in 2025.
and finally landing at 5% by the end of 2026. And that 5% seems to be the long-term base target.
Yeah, that gradual step down is smart, I think. It lets the ecosystem adjust.
Yeah.
No sudden shocks.
Less volatility, potentially.
And it still provides some inflation, some issuance, but keeps it much tighter. Plus, there's the distribution.
Yeah. Where did the newly created tokens go?
Good question. They're splitting it. 50% goes to the validators and delegators, the ones securing the network through staking.
Okay, standard incentive there.
And the other 50% goes into the treasury.
Right, the treasury. That seems like a big piece of their growth strategy.
Definitely. They call it these 4 big infrastructure pillars they're building out: AIOZ storage, AI, PIN, and stream.
So storage, AI computations, content pinning, and streaming.
Exactly. And the document says treasury tokens will be used to, incentivize growth and adoption for these specific products.
So using the token supply to bootstrap activity on these new services.
Pretty much. You can use treasury funds to reward early users, maybe give grants to developers building on top of these services, attract partners. It's about kickstarting that whole ecosystem.
Creates a feedback loop, right? More usage of the services.
It means more utility for the AIOZ token itself, potentially more demand.
Especially if it becomes the main way to pay for things within dApps built on AIOZ.
That seems to be the vision, a flourishing ecosystem where the token is constantly being used for real transactions.
Okay, so that covers the inflation side, bringing it down. But they're also doing something else to manage supply, right? Burning tokens?
Yes, absolutely. Token burning. It's the other side of the coin, actively removing tokens from circulation to counteract the inflation that does remain.
So not just making fewer new ones, but actually destroying some existing ones.
Correct. And they've outlined specific ways this will happen. Programmatic burns, happening regularly.
What are the triggers?
Well, the big one is transaction fees. 50% half of all transaction fees on the AIOZ blockchain get burned.
Wow, okay, so the busier the network gets, the more tokens get burned. That's a direct link.
Exactly. It introduces a deflationary pressure that scales with network activity. It helps balance things out.
Makes sense. What else triggers a burn?
There are a few others. 5% of all the rewards paid out to those DePIN managers we talked about earlier.
Okay, so a slice off the top of the infrastructure rewards.
Yep. Also, 5% of all revenue generated by the core AIOZ infrastructure itself,
Like the storage, AI, etc.
presumably.
Yeah.
And finally, 5% of all revenue from native dApps built on AIOZ.
So it's pretty comprehensive. Burns tied to general transactions, infrastructure rewards, infrastructure revenue, and dApp revenue.
It really covers multiple layers of the ecosystem. It shows they're serious about actively managing the token supply long term, not just setting inflation and forgetting it,
Right. It's an ongoing process baked into the system.
which aims to prevent oversupply and support the token's value proposition over time.
So pulling it all together, the token is clearly vital. It's the engine, the fuel, whatever analogy you want.
It really is. And they state pretty clearly that a healthy, balanced token economy is just essential for the network to succeed.
And the tools they're using are this combo, carefully reducing inflation over time.
And layering in these consistent token burn mechanisms
Yeah.
tied to actual network use and revenue.
Both working together to manage supply and theoretically create a more sustainable setup.
That's the plan. Mitigate the risks of too many tokens flooding the market, foster security, and build a sustainable environment for everyone using or building on AIOZ.
Okay, so let's recap the key takeaways for you listening. AIOZ Network is moving away from that initial 9% inflation.
Stepping it down gradually to a 5% target over the next couple of years.
And crucially, at the same time, they're implementing several ways to burn tokens, removing them from circulation based on network activity and revenue.
Yeah, for me, that connection is the really interesting part. It's not just one lever they're pulling.
It's a dual approach.
Exactly. Slowing down the creation of new tokens
Yeah.
while actively destroying existing ones based on usage. That feels like a pretty thought-out strategy for managing the token's economics.
And hopefully, for you listening, this deep dive clarifies how these changes aim to build a more solid foundation for the AIOZ network. Lower inflation, strategic burns, it's all geared towards, well, what they hope is long-term value and stability for users and everyone involved.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. How will this specific blend of controlled inflation reduction and activity-based token burning actually play out? How might it affect the AIOZ token's value and role compared to other projects in the decentralized space over the long haul?
Something to keep an eye on for sure.